And hello and welcome. This is what is this? Thursday, March 2nd. Welcome. Welcome to this day, first of all. Uh, my name is Ali Millian. I'm the executive director of the Nickel Independent Film Festival. Today, we've got an exciting workshop for you lined up called No Budget, No Problem, and featuring Mike Fardy, who's on staff here at the Nickel, but he's also an excellent filmmaker and good at just breaking things down and telling it like it is. How are you doing,
Yeah, this
Mike?
will be a no holds barred, no budget, no problem, no holds barred filmmaking workshop.
Just crushing dreams. No. And
No, we're making dreams. We're making dreams come true.
yes,
One small shoot at a time.
exactly. Yeah, crushing it. Crushing it.
Yes, exactly.
I think that's where I was going with that. Anyway, but yeah, yeah, what's gonna happen this evening, Mike? What are you gonna do?
So I have a very exciting PowerPoint presentation, which I'm going to go through. And I've got a couple of clips and examples from some movies that we're going to go through. And basically, it's just going to go through the process of honing your idea, bringing it to a script point. Planning is a large part of this presentation, is planning your shoot, going into some shooting strategies, all of these things, keeping in mind that we're trying to make the easiest, most fun edit possible. I don't know if this is true for everybody, but for me, every moment that the edit is ticking closer, I'm getting more and more anxious about it. So this is about trying to remove as much of that editing anxiety as possible by planning out all of your first steps to make sure that your shoot can go as smoothly as possible. You can get everything you need so that when you get into the editing room, you're not screaming and tearing your hair out as much, at least.
Excellent. Yeah, just some housekeeping. So everybody in the chat, say hello, say where you're watching from. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in there. And when there's a good moment, Mike will answer them.
Yes, that would be great. I would love your questions. I'm going to be moving. I'm going to try not to move too fast, but I know I get excited. So if I'm going too quick or you want me to re-explain something, feel free to drop that in the chat. And we are recording this though, so it will be available later, so you can come back and check it out at your leisure.
Absolutely.
Okay, I guess with that, I'm just going to dive right in. So I'm going to replace your screen with my screen.
Takeover, screen takeover.
Okay, that should be working there now. Yes, perfect. Okay. So first of all, we're just going to be talking about the core of your idea. So when you were getting together to shoot this idea, if you have a team or if you're by yourself, everything is going to come down to that core, especially with a short film. The closer that you can get around that single core idea, the easier the rest of the shoot is going to be. So deciding what is exciting about that for you, sometimes it is something more general, like a theme or like a vibe, just the kind of feeling of the film that you're generally excited about. Sometimes it's as specific as there is a scene that I've been thinking of that I've wanted to shoot for a long time, and I want to kind of build a film around it. So whatever it is about that idea, we want to try to get as concentrated around that for as short as possible. It's really hard to guess what audiences want to see, and you can drive yourself nuts sitting there trying to think like, oh, what is going to please people? Like, what is going to win awards? What are people going to sit down and rant and rave about? Most of the time, the films that people enjoy have something there's a nugget of personal experience. There's a uniqueness that comes from your own kind of adoration of that idea that people really get attracted to. So rather than trying to guess what they're going to like, make something that's personal to you and exciting to you. So some things I do to find that core idea are to explain the project to somebody. So before you do any script writing, before you do any outlining, as much or as little of that idea as you have thought out, just go and talk to people about it. And usually the parts that you get the most excited about and the parts that come out the most clearly are those nuggets of that core idea. So remember those things. You don't have to know everything around it right off the bat. That'll all come. But really sticking to that one piece of it is going to help you so much later. And sometimes when you're going, what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to pick out all the pieces that aren't helping that idea. So if there are extra scenes, I'm going to say this a few times, of like taking things out of the idea to really focus in on what's important about it. But when I say taking them out, I don't mean like throw them out, because there's always somewhere to put those things. So take them and put them in a little book or something like that. Save those scenes. You never know when they're going to come back. If that idea is based around a scene, write out the scene, write as much of it as you can. And then that'll give you a good piece to work up to and then work down from. If it's in the middle or maybe it's the start or the end, write as much of it as you can, in as much detail as you can. And then you might have a large chunk of your entire film done after you do that. So then it's just a matter of filling in the rest. Filmmaking is a series of, I find there are a series of roadblocks that you kind of hit as you go, especially in the writing stage of it. So the more you know about this idea, the more those roadblocks are going to get answered automatically. If you're having trouble figuring out what somebody's going to say, but you know that the theme is about self-discovery, then it's a lot easier to say, well, they have to say something that's either moving them closer to or farther away from their own self-discovery, depending on what stage of the film they're in when you're building out that arc. Another good exercise for summing up your idea is trying to bring it into a synopsis form. You'll do an official synopsis in some cases after the film is finished, but for right now, just writing that short little description, trying to keep it to 1 or 2 sentences maximum can be really good, because again, it just helps you peel away all of the unnecessary layers to bring you down to exactly what the movie's about. So I have one here from Fall, which is a very simple movie. It's just people climb up a big tower and they can't get down. I didn't write the synopsis for this, but after best friends Becky and Hunter climb 2,000 feet to the top of a remote abandoned radio tower, they find themselves stranded with no way down. It's a very simple concept and can be easily explained in 1 sentence. And you have to assume that every word is put in here on purpose. So the fact that they are best friends clearly plays into the plot in quite a significant way. In another example, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is the least small possible movie existing in every multiverse at the same time. But again, trying to boil down that basic idea of what is at the core of the movie and say it in 1 sentence can be really good. And I think the simplest possible one being Jaws. Simple idea, big shark. So once you have that kind of core idea and you're feeling really good about it, then before we move into writing or anything like that, outlining is one of the most important steps. It's one of the easiest steps to skip, but it is it's going to save you so many headaches during writing. I know this, the high school film competition is coming up, which is looking for 5 minutes. Our horror challenge as well, or any of our film challenges for the most part, are looking for 5 minutes. So being able to lay that out, it can feel like a lot of time, but it's very short. There's not a whole lot that can happen. So really boiling down all of the extraneous stuff into that little nugget of gold is best. So when you're outlining, don't worry about dialogue. Just write what happens, just one scene after another or one moment after another. Some people find flashcards really helpful for at this outlining stage. And my strategy with flashcards is write all the scenes that you know off the bat. Don't worry about going from beginning to end. Just write all the scenes you know are going to be in it. And then you can kind of lay them out in front of you in order and see what's missing. Like, do I need a beginning scene? Do I need something in between these two ideas? And then just write down, you don't have to get specific at this point in time. Just know this is my beginning, middle, end. These are the couple of pieces that tie those together. And starting here is a good time to start looking at what is it actually going to take to shoot this thing. So I always look at, the first thing I look at is how many locations am I going to have to shoot at? And is it possible to boil that down to one? If you can get it to one, your shoot is going to be so easy. That's not always possible, depending on the story. But boiling down those locations and really only using the necessary ones, that is one of the biggest time killers when you're shooting, is having to go from location to location and setting up. Another good thing to look at is how many characters are in it. If it is a character-driven narrative piece, then you're not going to have a lot of time with your main character to let them have a satisfying change throughout the story or let them feel all of their moments. The less other characters you have around, the more you're going to be able to focus on the experience of your main character. But that being said, a couple of other characters to challenge that main character or to represent different parts of their personality sometimes is completely necessary and great. But if you notice that you have 9 characters that you have to explore within 5 minutes, there are difficulties. And sometimes you can take, I find every once in a while, I will write a list of characters and realize that they're all just character traits. Like each person will have one character trait, and we are all legion. We have so many ideas and such a diverse personality. So a lot of times you can combine those traits into one character. You can also start looking at whether you need any special props or special costumes. And with all of these, I always recommend to use what you have access to. If you live in a very spooky house with a terrifying basement of some kind that you have access to all the time, it's a good thing to think about, like, can I use that? Is that an interesting spot to shoot? Will it add to the idea and add a little bit of production value without adding a lot of complication? The same thing with props and costumes. If you're a collector of strange things and you can include those, then it really spices up the scene. So taking a bit of an inventory of what you have access to and asking yourself, can this up the production value of my film without me having to go and spend money or rent a location, then it's a good idea to try to include those things. Once you're feeling pretty good about your outline, you can move to the script. So I would only move to the script once you're looking at that outline and there's no more detail that you can put into it without actually getting into the dialogue and the piece by piece. I wouldn't worry too much about formatting this. Like in a lot of these cases, the script is just for you. So as long as you and your team can understand what's put down, you don't have to get too into the font size and the courier font, anything like that. But some of this information is going to be really helpful when it comes to breaking down your script and finding out how to shoot it. So I have some examples here. You have your scene heading. This EXT means exterior. Edge is not super helpful, but maybe that's the name of a club or something. I'm not sure, an outdoor club. And then night is good to know. Then you have your action lines. This is just what happens. So only writing what you can see and hear. Try it, because that'll give you a better estimate of how long the film is going to be. A lot of people say 1 page of script equals 1 minute of film, but in shorts that can really vary because, well, I'll show an example from Lady Bird here of kind of the first 5 pages kind of coming out to around 3 minutes of film. But it'll be a lot. I'm going to talk later about how to time out your script to find out if it's going to fit in that 5 minutes. Because if you can edit it down to that before you shoot, then you won't have to cut scenes that you love once you get to editing to fit it under a time limit. So only writing what you see. So Zach shivers and turns to the bouncer. We can visualize that in our head. We don't have anything about Zach thinking about the first winter that he ever remembered himself shivering. By God, it was hard to get me in that little one-piece snowsuit. We don't see that stuff, so we don't need to write it down. Then we have, these are the dialogue sequences. So character name and what they say. And those are pretty simple. These are formatted in the way that you would see it on a script. Later in your screenwriting career, this format is going to be really, really important. But when you're making stuff for just yourself, you can just put it in Word or whatever you have access to, just making sure that this information is visible to you. So I'm just going to take the script from Lady Bird. Let me see if I can figure this out here. Oh, you can see that. That's great. Okay. So we've got, so this is Greta Gerwig. This is a really great script. And we'll just kind of look through the first few pages. So you can see here, we've got our interior motel, California, early morning. We've got our action lines. This is a little bit more, than is necessary to write, but sometimes it informs other people on the crew. So if you're trying to inform your locations, then you want to say a little bit about like what the motel they're staying in looks like, so that when you're dressing up that area, you can dress it up properly. We've got our dialogue here. VO here means voiceover. So we're not seeing the character say this. We're still looking at this image here. And now we're seeing them speak to each other. So without any VO, just back and forth speaking. We switch to the interior of a Toyota Corolla, California day. So now we have kind of a driving scene. The day and night are especially important when it comes to breaking down, because you're going to want to look at how many scenes are happening in the day, how many are happening in the night, because you're going to have to break down later, when are we going to shoot this? How are we going to schedule each scene? If you have half of your short happening in the morning and half of it happening at night, when you're going through your schedule, you're going to want to see if you can shoot both of those in the same day, or if you'll need to sort of split them up. This scene, until she gets to school is 4 pages long. And I'll just show you that scene. Should be.
You might need to, so the audio isn't coming through. So you
Oh,
might
the
need
audio is not coming.
If you stop your screen share and start it again and select share audio.
Oh, okay. Oh my. Let's.
Jaws is about a big, big, big shark. Though. That's all it needs to be.
Yeah, it's really all you need to know. Sorry, my Zoom is acting up here.
Maybe something about the mayor, but
Yeah, yeah, and that's sometimes you'll have more character descriptions in those as well if it's a very character centered piece. Like I do think that would be something they would mention in Jaws. I cannot.
Oh,
sorry. Oops.
So if anybody has any comments or questions as this thing is going through, feel free to pop them in the chat. How long is the shortest short film you've seen?
The shortest short film I've seen? I would
No, how long is how long is the shortest short film that you've seen? It's a funny sentence, but
there is actually a great YouTube channel that I used to watch all the time called The 5 Second Film. And they used to release a different 5-second film every week. I would say those are the shortest. Some of them come in at 4 seconds, which is pretty wild. And some of them tell the most basic story possible, but a story.
right, like those 10-word short stories or
yeah. I think I might have to rejoin this Zoom. Seems to have taken away my ability to push any buttons.
Oh no.
I will be.
Well, yeah, technical issues is that's something that the film people are intimately aware of as well.
Okay, sorry, I'll be right back. Ah, it did what I wanted to when I threatened to leave. Perfect. Okay.
Oh, that's you just have to threaten it.
There we go. Share
So
sound.
Romy Robinson says there is a short film that literally lasts 7 seconds on YouTube in its entirety and commented on Facebook.
Oh, 7 seconds. Yeah, that's and that is it's a challenge, really, getting even your 5-minute film. It's such a challenge to tell a story in such a short amount of time.
7 seconds that's a Vine, isn't it? Isn't that the Vine length? Anyway.
Okay, let's see if we can hear this now.
See if this works.
Do you think I look like I'm from
There we go.
Okay.
You are from Sacramento.
You don't have to do that.
Well, it's nice to make things neat and clean. You ready to go home?
Ready?
Her hand moved behind his head and supported it. Her fingers moved gently in his hair. She looked up and across the barn, and her lips came together and smiled mysteriously.
You've been listening to The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck.
If you
Our college trip took 21 hours and 5 minutes.
Hey, why don't let's just sit with what we heard.
Are you serious?
Well, we don't have to constantly be entertaining ourselves, do we?
I wish I could live through something.
Aren't you?
Nope. The only exciting thing about 2002 is that it's a palindrome.
Okay, fine. Well, yours is the worst life of all, so you win.
Oh, so now you're mad?
No, it's
Because
just you're
I
being
wanted to
ridiculous
listen to
because you
music?
have a great life.
I'm sorry, I'm not perfect.
No one's asking you to be perfect. Just consider it would do.
I don't even want to go to school in this state anyway. I hate California. I want to go to the East Coast.
Your dad and I will barely be able to afford in-state tuition.
There are loans,
Your brother, your
scholarships.
very smart brother, he can't even find a job.
He and Shelley work. They have
They
jobs.
bag at the grocery store. That is not a career, and they went to Berkeley. Your father's company is laying off people right and left. Did you even know that? No, of course you don't, because you don't think about anybody but yourself. An immaculate heart is already a luxury.
Immaculate fart. You wanted that, not me.
Miguel saw someone knifed in front of him at Sac High. Is that what you want? So you're telling me that you want to see somebody knifed right in front of you?
barely
Right in
saw
front of-
that. I want to go where culture is, like
How
New
in the
York,
world did I raise such a
or at least
snob?
Connecticut or New Hampshire,
Well,
where
you
writers
couldn't
live in the
get into
woods.
those schools anyway.
Mom,
You can't even pass your driver's test.
because you wouldn't let me practice
The way
enough.
that you work, or the way that you don't work, you're not even worth state tuition, Christine.
My name is Ladybird.
Well, actually, it's not, and it's ridiculous.
Call me
because your name
Ladybird
is
like you said
Christine.
you would.
You should just go to City College. You know, with your work ethic, just go to City College and then to jail, and then back to City College, and then maybe you'd learn to pull yourself up and not expect everybody to do everything.
So with this, the general like idea of it and looking at the script, that comes in at about 2 minutes and 55 seconds. It's 4 pages of script. And the reason that it goes so fast is because so much of this is dialogue. Dialogue moves a lot faster than action most of the time. Even in these big scenes where she sits and takes a long pause, stares out the window, now sullen. Even with these things in there, the dialogue moves quite fast, especially once they start to get heated. So later when we talk about timing out your scenes, kind of picturing that pace in your head is going to help to see how long your script is actually going to be. And you can see here that they actually have the 2 characters yelling at each other at the same time written into the script here. And there are other times where down here they're written as if they're going back and forth, but then in the performance end up stepping on each other. A nice exercise when you're getting into finding your idea and working on your script is to do exactly this. I have here this website, imsdb.com. At this site, you can search most of, you can see a lot of film scripts on there. So if you have favorite movies that you watch all the time, especially movies that have a similar tone to the one you were writing or trying to make, going to this site and looking at the script and watching the movie kind of next to each other can be really helpful to see what those words actually turn into on the screen. And then writing is hard. Writing is hard every time. It's always hard. If you're stuck on dialogue, you can say it out loud, try to have the conversation between the 2 characters. We did all of that outlining and that thinking about the core idea so that when you hit hard spots in your writing, you'll be able to check back with those things, with those outlines. And hopefully you have the next step written in your outline. If you don't, and that still doesn't answer your question, can your core idea answer that question? if possible, I mean, thinking about the Ladybird example, we have, if you look at that first scene, it's almost a short film in itself. You start with mother and daughter lying in bed together, like relishing every last second that they have with each other, to Ladybird jumping out of a moving car to get away from her. And that is a perfect arc in itself. So if you know that that is what your short is about, is that kind of is showing how that relationship changes moment to moment between a mother and daughter, then you can check back in with that core idea, and maybe that will answer the question for the scene that you're stuck on. If you can't write it right away, just outline it. Say, I have a general idea for what I want to happen in this scene. I can't figure it out. Rather than sitting and stewing on it, outline it, keep going, skip past it, do the next part that you know happens. Taking a walk often helps. And then if you do all that stuff and you come back to it and it's still not making sense, just throw it in the garbage. You probably don't need it. And again, don't throw it in the garbage. Throw it in a book, use it in another film. You obviously like it if you tried this hard to keep it in, but if it's this hard to make it work, it might not be necessary, but it might work in something in the future. That is always, it's so easy for me to say that and completely impossible for me to do it. I will try to crowbar an idea in until the very last second, and then end up trying to improvise it into the script. So at this point, if you've finished your script, if you've gone through that arc, you've got your change, you've got your roughly 5 pages, then we'll start trying to break it down. So this is where your slug lines come in. So scanning through your script, how many locations do you have? We have, motel and car in the Ladybird example. We have those 2 locations. We can see them in the slug line. So we have our 1 location, 2 locations. What props do we need? So this involves a bed, a bedroom set. They show this audiobook and these tapes. So if you want to show those things, those are things that you'll physically have to track down. So going through your script and taking a list of these things, in this case, what is informing the costumes is that line in the beginning talking about it being 2002, and then looking at the character's personality. How would they dress in 2002? Do you need any special costumes? Are you thinking of doing like a fantasy or a sci-fi? Does that involve any extra costume work? And do you already have access to those things? And then keeping track of how many day scenes, how many night scenes. And this is kind of your last chance to simplify any of these ideas before you go into the shoot, and then you're running into problems and kind of cutting things on the day, which if possible, you would, like to avoid. These are some things that make shoots more complicated. If you're forced to use public locations where you can't control who's walking through or who's talking, that can be really difficult, having too many locations and having to drive or walk all over the place to try to get all of your shots. Having lots of actors, not just the fact that making sure that you get your filming coverage on all of them, but also just scheduling. Like, you have to get all those people into a place at the same time, can be really difficult. Background actors, if your scenes require background, trying to think like, what is the minimum amount of people I could have standing around in the background? Is it really necessary for the shoot? And then shooting outside and shooting at night. Outside can be really weather dependent. And again, it's harder to control the sound outside. So we did a shoot a little while ago where we shot on Rennie's River Trail. And so you can hear the river the whole time, which isn't so bad because it's constant. But the hard part was that a group of crows found us and just sat over our heads screaming the entire time. And we could not pay the crows off with anything. They just would not go away. And they stayed there the whole time. And it was really difficult in the edit to match crows screaming at us. And then shooting at night, the difficulty can just be getting enough light into the camera. And then you can compound all of these things together. If you have a night shoot at a public location, if you're trying to shoot at like the skating loop in Bannerman at night with people skating on it, then you have all of these problems kind of falling on top of each other at once. So again, not to say don't do them. Probably don't do all of them at the same time is a good idea. But if you find that your whole shoot is going to be really, really difficult, are there any sections that you can make easier by moving it inside or shooting it in the day, or taking it into a more private, controllable space? Also, film is a very collaborative thing. So you're going to have a team. If you can get a bit of a team, you can shoot this stuff all by yourself. It's not impossible to shoot things on your own. It is very doable with these same sort of steps. Just when you're shooting alone, you definitely want to try to make the script as simple as possible. Just because you're not going to have as many people to assist you through the difficulties of those more complicated setups. But if you have a team, then look at the different roles. Like, is there somebody who can and is interested in acting, directing, lighting, camera, art? These are all separate departments that bring a lot of creative power to a script. Having somebody who is really interested in art and making props or doing makeup or building I don't mean like building a set, but unless they're good at that, which would be great, latch onto them and never let go. But even just dressing a set, like putting posters up in the background, making a place look lived in, that can add so much to your scenes, as well as camera. If you know someone who's obsessed with camera and knows a lot about lenses and frames and lighting, then those are also great people to have around, because it spreads the workload out. If you're directing, it is really nice to have people who are looking after their own departments, so that you can trust your art people to make the scene look really good. You can trust your lighting and your camera, so that when you get into the edit, you can see your actors. And if you have those people and you can trust those people, then as a director, you really just get to focus in on making sure that you get all of the shots you need to make it to the edit. And you can listen to those performances and watch those performances and make sure that you're getting what you need from your actors. Actors are very good at like bringing their own thing. Your job as the director isn't necessarily to talk to the actors and tell them how to do their performances, but just to make sure that when you go into a scene that that there's like a continuity in the performance. So somebody's not angry, then sad right after, as soon as you cut the camera, they go from being in a rage to looking very sad. You really want to keep that edit in mind. Listen to your group. If somebody says, I love editing, kidnap them and steal them and take them and foster that relationship forever. And the same with producing. Someone says, I think I'd love to be a producer, then take them and put them in a bag and feed them and let them stay with you forever. These are great people to have around. That might be more from my personal experience, because those are the two roles that I'm not very good at. But if there are roles that you know that you don't enjoy, then finding people and building a group around that can be really helpful for making a team that you're going to come back to over and over again to shoot more shorts as time goes on. So time to shoot, not really. No, there's more planning. There's more planning before shooting. Always more planning. This is another very easy to skip, but very important step. Storyboarding or doing a shot list. This is the outline for the visuals of your script. So when you're thinking about what you're going to shoot, they can be so simple. Like, these stick drawings are better than a lot of the storyboards that I've done in the past. You're really just putting the visuals down so that you can communicate it to the people who are helping you out. So whoever's shooting with the camera, you want to show them what is the framing. Like, we want to do a close-up here on this person with spaghetti hair, and we want to do a wide shot of these people setting up a film set. And if you go through and just picture how your film is going to look when it's edited, and give an explanation of each shot. So whenever the camera is going to change, if you can write down and draw what it's going to look like when the camera changes in these most basic terms, then as you shoot, you're going to be able to check those off like a checklist. And then if you check everything off from your storyboard and your shot list, then you know that when you go to the edit, you're going to have all of that stuff. This is an example of some camera moves and how you can represent them in a storyboard. So if you want to push in on this character, you can put these up in the corner. So this is what our final frame is going to be here. If you're tilting up, so your camera starts down on the ground and you want to show the table and the coffee and then the face afterwards, you can tilt. You can pan to go from left to right or right to left. If you're picturing that camera movement in your head and you want to start with one frame and end with another without cutting the camera, then these are some ways to kind of mix up your shooting, mix up your shots without just cutting and keeping it single. These are just some examples of different types of shots that you tend to do when you're covering actors doing dialogue. If you want to sort of show the actor walking into a space, you might do these long shots, these extreme longs, and then moving in closer and closer to get more performance, or even these like specials, these extreme close-ups for more visual moments. These can be good things to look at again when you're watching films, and especially watching films that are similar to your tone. Pay attention to where directors tend to point the camera, how close they tend to get in different moments. Because there is a whole art to visual storytelling, how close we get to a person. We're going to feel different about a person saying their lines at this long shot where they're far away, we see their whole body, versus if we're right in on their face. They could be making exactly the same face in both of these, but look how dramatic this guy is. And this guy's just lost in a field. So you can really get a different feel depending on where you put the camera on your actors. So number of setups is a big thing to think about when you're planning out your shoot. So when we say setups, What I mean is how many times do you have to put the camera in a place to press play or to press record to get a section? If we look at the Ladybird example again, in the car, we have this 2-shot. So this is one setup. And every time we see both of these characters, we know they set the camera up once and they ran the whole scene from there. So that's one setup. As we move through, we get this insert on the tapes. So that's another setup. We've had to move the camera. We've basically put it in her lap and are looking down at these tapes. And then we get coverage on each actor. So we have one setup from this side of the car and one setup from this side of the car, just giving us a special on each character. And in that whole scene, that is all done basically in those 3 setups. And most of the time, you want to guarantee you get at least that when it comes to getting your setups for each scene. Every time you set up the camera, you kind of want to think, I want to get all of the characters talking to each other, and then I want to get a setup on each individual character a bit closer to get their specific reactions. And if possible, can you combine some setups to save some time? So if you have a character walking from one room to another and continuing their dialogue over there, sometimes you can use camera movement to transition from one area to another one. So if you pan and follow them, then you don't have to turn the camera off, pick it up, bring it over into the next room, and then start filming again. You can just make the scene a little bit longer by adding in some camera movement. And the last thing to do, I would say, would be to do your establishing shots and your B-roll. So in the Ladybird example, we see when they get into the car, we have this establishing shot of being on the highway. So it's just looking out the front of the car. There's no actors in it. It's just telling us, oh, we're driving. Often when you switch locations, getting an establishing shot, like an exterior, if you're going to a new house, getting an exterior of the house, or getting a shot of somebody walking into a room, these really help in your edit to move you from one location to another. The establishing shots let us know, oh, we are somewhere else now. And rather than if you shoot in one room in a house and you've switched houses and you want people to know that, if you just start filming in another room, people will usually assume it's the same house, just a different room. So those establishing shots to help you change from location to location can be really important. And then inserts and B-roll are also really helpful in the edit. So inserts would be like going in on the tapes in Ladybird. I have some edited footage that I'll show you in a bit where we use some different shots to get between. For us, we filmed something very quickly and we didn't know the lines to our own script. So we did really tough performances. So in the edit, to get only the good takes, we used B-roll and close-ups to move from good take to good take. But the most important thing is to get that coverage, to get your actors, to get them saying what they're saying, to get the close-ups if you can get them. Because all of these establishing shots in the B-roll, you can shoot that other times on your own. If you have access to your camera, then you can shoot those at other times. Take advantage of your actors while you have them. And you don't need to spend so much time making them wait around so that you can get an image of a of a few tapes. In the case of like a big movie, oftentimes if they cut in and someone is holding something, it is not the actor's hands holding it. They'll have a hand model of some kind. And then simplifying your schedule. So you don't need to shoot in order of your script. You should try to group your shots together as best you can. So when you look at a location or you look at a setup, specifically, if you're shooting in one single room and you know somebody is standing on this back wall and they're going to deliver a few lines, they're going to walk over to the living room, but then later in the script, they're going to come back and stand at this wall again. That's a great way to combine those two setups. So rather than shoot this scene, pick up your camera, move to the living room, shoot that scene, pick up your camera, come back and shoot this again, shoot all of the scene that is in this location, even if it's out of order, and then switch your setup afterwards. This is especially important if you're moving from location to location, because you don't want to pick up everything, leave a place, and then have to come back to it later. Shooting like that, there are some situations that you'll have to think about. If there's a big time jump between the two times that they're standing at that wall, like, do they need to change wardrobe? Like, do they need a makeup change? Those are things you can think about of which one. Just think about which one is easier. Is it easier to pick up the camera and shoot everything in that wardrobe first, or is it easier to switch the wardrobe over and get this shot in that setup? That's something that's kind of on a case by case, but definitely good things to think about before you set the camera up. Rehearsing if you can with your actors. A lot of the stuff I work on nowadays with just like me and my buddies, we don't rehearse, and it makes it take so much longer because we don't know our lines and we're just not professional at all, but we have a good time. So you don't have to rehearse, but it will save you time if you do. And then get the important shots first. So again, thinking back to that core idea, if you're in your location and you have something that you really want to spend a lot of time on, because maybe it's a big performance moment or it's just really core to your whole project, make sure that you have the most time to spend on that. So that I would always say to go to that as quickly as possible. Just because if that's the moment that you really care about, you don't want to leave it to the end of the day and then run out of time and have to rush it. Better to rush a scene that isn't as important if you do have to rush one. Again, establishers, inserts, and B-roll can be shot later without actors, so you can plan to do them last. And check when the sun goes up and down. If you need night or day, if you're trying to shoot at sunrise, you have a very limited time to capture the sunrise. So knowing when that's going to happen means that in the lead up to that, you can get all of your setup done so that your camera's up, your actors are in place and rehearsed, you're ready to go, so that when the sun peaks up and you want to get that moment of the first sun cracking over the horizon, then you are ready to just press record to do that. It's a very nice feeling when you have that kind of out of the way, even if it means you had to wake up quite a bit earlier to get ready to do that. There's nothing worse than waking up early to go do that, getting there and then missing it, because then you have to go back and do it another day or compromise, which is unacceptable. Now it's time to shoot. For real this time. What you need a camera. And then end of list, because you planned so much, you've got everything else. So you nailed it. Good job, you. Other things that will help, though, a tripod of some kind or something that can hold your camera still and at the right height and angle. This is especially important if you're shooting by yourself. I've used a stack of books or just like a well-heighted table. You don't have to go out and buy an amazing tripod or anything. There are also, for your phone, the Gorilla Pods. They look like a little alien spaceship, and you can twist the legs around and wrap them around stuff to make them grab onto a tree branch or anything. Those can be really helpful for making sure that your camera's in the right place. Any lamps or lights around your house and some extension cords can be really good for getting the lighting that you need to film your scenes. Looking at more examples of films, Lady Bird is shot in a lot of like very natural looking light. But if you're shooting at night inside, you have some great opportunities to kind of shape light around your actors. So you can do that with just setting up random lamps around the house and looking at how the light falls on the actor's face. Do you want it really dramatic, like a hard line down the middle of their face, one side in shadow, one side in light? Having something behind them to give them a bit of a hair light and set them apart from the background can be nice. This is it's really nice to watch scenes with that filter in your mind to say, like, how did they light this? Like, this character looks great, or they look really dramatic, or they look really scary. A lot of times they do that with light. So watch a lot of stuff that is around the tone of your film and look at how they do that, because it's amazing what you can do with just like a few different lights of varying brightness and temperature. And then if you need to record external audio, there's a few reasons you might need to, or you might want to. If you have a narrator, rather than filming scenes and trying to guess which parts the narrator is talking over, it's often better to just record the whole audio separately, because you can run into your closet and surround yourself with lots of shirts and stuff like that and get a nice sound quality, block out a lot of ambient noise and get a higher quality sound recording. If you have if someone else who you're filming with has another phone, you can always use the audio recorder on that. Another reason to do it would be if you have the camera really far away from your actors and your camera is the only thing recording the audio. If you can hide another phone up close to them, like there are lav microphones and boom microphones, but if you don't have access to those things, just taking your phone and putting it up next to the actors and just recording the sound can be really good. If they're speaking low, but you want to be far away and you want to make sure that you get the proper sound for that, that can be really helpful. If you are recording extra audio, just remember to do yourself a favor in the edit and get someone to clap. You see the slates in a lot of big film shoots because they assist the editor in a big way. But for this purpose, all you need is a clap, because you'll see the little spike in the sound and you can line the audio up with the video really easily if you have that distinct sound. So shooting for the edit. As you go through, keep your shot list handy. It's going to help remind you where you wanted to put the camera in your mind. It will change. It always does. It'll change a little bit as time goes on, but check off the shots as you get them. By the end, you really want to make sure that you have all of those shots that you set out to do, to make sure that when you're in the edit, you're not missing anything, because going back and having to shoot something oftentimes is not an option. So you'll end up cutting that scene and trying to reshape the story and editing which can be done most of the time, but is not ideal and can be really frustrating. Digital zoom is your enemy. On your phone, expanding and zooming in with your phone is going to pixelate the image quite a bit. So try to use it as little as possible. Put the camera as close as you need to put it to get the framing that you're looking for. I think most phones now have a certain amount of zoom that looks totally fine afterwards. So it's just something to play around with your own camera or with your own phone to see how much zoom can I get without losing any quality, and trying not to go over that. In the same vein, light is your friend. A lot of auto cameras will up their settings, like their ISO, to let as much light as possible into the camera if there's not enough natural light for it to take in. But it'll add this noise and this grain that goes into it. So if you see all these speckles all over your footage, usually it means there's not enough light going into the camera. So adding a bit more light, you can darken footage in editing, but you can't really brighten it. So erring on the side of too much light is usually a better way to go. Trying a scene again usually takes less time than setting up for a new scene. So don't be too scared of doing multiple takes to make sure that you get the performance, to make sure that camera and sound is happy with how it looked, how it sounded. Is the lighting good? Was the performance good? It's usually worth it to do another take rather than risk it and then end up in the edit without the footage that you wanted. If you're going to do any improv in scenes, I recommend it. It's very fun, especially if you're doing comedy. A lot of times actors, if you've done rehearsals and they've looked at their lines, and actors come in and they've done the work and they say, oh, I'd really love to try this at this moment. I always say, go for it if you have time, but do make sure that you get what's on the script before you take too much time to improvise, just so that you know when you get in there, if that improvised line ends up contradicting something later and you can't use it, that you still have what you set out to shoot. And then after that, go wild and get all that improv magic that is unplannable. Continuity, I'll go over in a second. Get your coverage. That's what we talked about before, with making sure that you have every actor saying every line. If you're really if you're a few films in and you're really confident in what the edit is going to look like, and you don't need coverage on somebody because you're not going to use it, then feel free to skip it. But starting out, I would say just get it. Because it really does save edits, unless you're 100% sure you're not going to use it. Don't fix it in post, fix it now. You are most likely post. When you're saying, I'll fix it in post, you literally mean you in this case, and you will be sad. You'll be sad when you have to do that. You'll curse your past self. So continuity, this is its own job on film shoots. They have a continuity person who is watching a lot of this stuff again, so that the director can pay attention to performances and that big picture. Some common things that don't work in continuity are eye line. So if you have two characters talking to each other, when we talk about coverage, there's a few different, did we get flagged? Like, should I not show any more Lady Bird stuff?
Yeah, I wouldn't show anymore.
Okay, I will. So this is
YouTube is fine with it, actually, but Facebook.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So these are a few projects that I'm currently editing. So here we've got a 2-shot. This is our wide, our master. This is what we shot the whole scene in. We made sure that both of the actors, we got all of their lines from there. And then we have coverage on each person individually. This type of coverage is clean coverage. So each of us is in the frame completely by ourselves. If we had been looking at each other during the scene, we do look at each other a few times in the wide. And I have to make sure that when we go to the mediums, that me looking straight at the camera, I have to be looking straight at the camera in the wide as well. That's one of the continuity things that you need to look for, is where was the actor just looking? You don't want their head teleporting from one side to the other, because you can notice those things. So if two characters are looking at each other, you would see Michaela here would have to be looking up at me. So if we did her coverage, where's her coverage? Here. No, here. If we did her coverage and she was looking in my direction but down, then we wouldn't assume that she was looking at me. We'd think that she was looking at something down on the ground. So watching the eye line, if you have the actors to stand in their spots when you're doing coverage on somebody, that can be great, because then they'll be looking where they're supposed to be looking. But you can't always assume that's going to look right on camera. So it is a good idea to take a look, have the actor look where they're going to look, and just think, does it make sense where they're looking right now? If you don't have a camera, people use different things. They'll put a dot on the wall that the person can look at so their eyes don't wander. They'll use a tennis ball on a stick, all sorts of fun things to keep the eye line where it needs to be. Big movements. So if somebody is flailing around in one take and then you cut to the wide and they're completely still, unless that's what you're going for, that's another thing to watch. People picking up and putting down objects all the time. It's a good thing to look out for. Most of the time people don't notice. If they do notice and they've watched it 3 times and they see it, they've watched your film 3 times. That's great. You've already won. But it's nice to keep track of. Some things are impossible, like candles, clocks. Those are all really difficult. They'll be jumping all over the place if people are noticing. Time of day. So your lighting and your time of day kind of go together. So if you're shooting throughout the daytime and you run out of time and it becomes night, but your scene isn't supposed to take place at night, then that's the kind of ticking clock on your day. Are you going to get all of your daytime scenes before the sun goes down? It is really hard, even inside, to light inside as if it's still daytime. It's very, very hard to do that. And it's really hard to make inside dark enough to believably be night, unless you have windowless rooms in your house where you can control every little bit of light that's coming into them. So those are things to look out in terms of continuity. So this is what we were talking about, the master shot. That's where you're getting as much of your coverage as possible. So you want to run the whole scene in your master so that you'll always have this to go back to. And then you'll get your coverage on each person, whether it's dirty coverage or clean coverage. Dirty coverage means that when you shoot over somebody else's shoulder and you see a little bit of that character still in the frame. And that can be really good, because then you don't have to worry about eye line as much, because the audience can see the character standing there. As long as they're generally on the same side, it's a lot easier to for the audience to track where they are in the scene. Yeah, and give yourself enough time in each setup, and give yourself enough takes to make sure that you're happy with the camera, the sound, and the performance. Those are the big things. These are your inserts, your specials. Another nice thing to look at when you're shooting coverage is not just the parts where the character you're filming is talking, but also when they're listening to each other. So these are the raw files. These are the full takes. So sometimes having these moments in between when the character isn't speaking, but they're just reacting to what they're hearing, these can be really useful to put in for different effects and to get in between from one take to another. So that can be another really nice thing to have over, or we actually used it in this one too, I think. There's one point here where someone mentions the garbage grabber, and we just get a little reaction shot over the top of that, which can be really, it can add a lot. You'll see it a lot in films too, when two people are talking to each other. The audio of one character will continue, but we'll be seeing the other character taking in the information that they're hearing. There's a lot of really nice stuff you can do with your actors if you're thinking about that in the whole scene. When they really get into it, it can be really nice to see and really pull you in. Your sound, whatever you're recording your sound into, if it's just your phone camera, film a little bit and then listen back to it with headphones if you can, and listen to hear what kind of ambient noise is in the room. There are certain lights and appliances and stuff like that that make lots of noise. Is there any way that you can get rid of that extra noise? Do you need external sound? Listen to your characters talking, listen back to it. Is it fine? Then totally go for it. If you do need the external sound, or remember to start your camera and your audio as close to each other as possible, and to get a clap. So I can show you the kind of importance of that in here. So we have our character right off the top, and we can see her clap, and then we have the audio of the clap right after. So this is the audio that we got off of our camera, and this is the audio from our other audio recorder. And you can see here, this little blip is a clap, and this is a clap. And when you can see those little blips, you can just sync them up with each other. So that when they clap, the sound goes together. Then you know, once they're talking,
Hi, I'm Sagatha Tandy,
that their mouth is going to line up with the audio that you recorded. Most editing programs are going to show you the waveform. If your editing program doesn't, then you can listen to the sound and just watch when the hands come together, and then put the sound in the right spot. And then just go through and watch and make sure that the mouth lines up with the words. You can always shift it back and forth a little bit to just make sure that it looks right. Room tone can be a really nice thing. Every once in a while, if you've watched short films, whenever the camera changes, you will hear a difference in just like the ambient noise in the room, because the angle has changed, and it can be a little bit jarring. This is a little more advanced, but it's not very hard to do. If you just, whenever you're in a location, just let your sound recorder run with no noise, just the sound of the room. Then when you go into your edit, if you're finding that whenever you cut, you're hearing this noise change, you can lay that sound over the bottom, and it will just play over the whole thing, and take away that kind of feeling of the noise suddenly changing. Yeah, again, always checking back to your checklist. Do you have everything that you need before you go into the edit? Especially when you're shooting, it is such a pain to try to go back and recreate everything that you were doing the first time that you had everything set up. So taking that extra time and making sure that you have everything is really, really key for when you move on to the edit. And then it's editing time. So when I go to edit, usually you will come in to your editing program and you'll just see a window like this with a bunch of clips dropped into it all willy-nilly. It can be really helpful to just create different folders for different large sections of the film. Just so that when you're looking for a certain part and you want to edit a certain part, you're limiting how much stuff you have to stare at, because it can get a little bit overwhelming. I like to take a scene and lay down the takes that I need to build it. So I've got these two master shots. I've got the coverage from this actor and the coverage from this actor. If you don't have a lot of footage and you do need to sync up the sound, it can be helpful to just do that for the scene so that you don't have to. It's a lot easier to sync the sound to the full clip than it is to cut up all of your footage into little pieces and then try to sync little chunks of sound. It's a lot easier to sync it up here. And then when you go to cut it into pieces, you have these chunks that can move around together that you know are synced because you did that clap off the top. That'll save a lot of time. And then I tend to go through and you can cut out anything extraneous. Like here, we're just syncing up. So we can cut that stuff out. Just get rid of it. It's less stuff to look at. And I'll usually get like the largest chunk that we can together. But here you can see neither of us know our lines. So we are continuously looking down at a sheet of paper that has our lines written on it on the ground. This is the thing that in this project in particular, I had to cut around, was to make sure that it looked like we knew all of our lines and we looked professional. So I have delivered a line. Michaela looks at her sheet. So before she looks down, while she looks up, she delivers this line, and everything so far up to this point, these are competent actors. So we will keep tricking everyone into thinking that is true. Michaela is a competent actor. I am not. So I need a lot of editing to make me look reasonable. So as long as we use that much of it, we know all our lines at this point. But the next part, when we miss it, that's when we can move to our coverage. That's why we want to make sure when we get into that coverage that we have every line. One of the steps I'll do then is I'll go through and just get.
Because the pre-show is about to begin.
The clock is ticking. So that's one line from that actor. So I tend to chop those up into ones that I think are usable takes and ones that I think are not. If there's some stuff we can't use, I'll just get it off the timeline as quickly as possible. Just to make it a little bit less overwhelming. You can just take as many of those pieces as possible. I'll go through the whole take and grab those pieces. And then in here, we know it's just me talking off screen and checking the notes. So we don't need any of that. So we can just get rid of it. You can go through and chop these things up. And then eventually, when you have those things kind of chopped, then we have this kind of final I have it muted, but.
The program's about to begin, but before we get down to business.
Get ready for tonight's Pre-show. First, insert your 3D audio output device for the full 3D experience.
Check the make and model of your headphones and speakers.
So then it's really just going through and taking the chronological order of the script and placing in those pieces of coverage. Here, I had to make sure that we had turned like this. You can see Michaela's arms are at her sides. And when we transfer into this clip, we get that same shape in the shoulder. So it's less jarring when we change positions. We couldn't use my coverage in this case because I didn't do that because I don't know what I'm doing. This is where a good actor can also save you lots of time. Michaela knows she needs to stand like that to match her coverage, and she's doing a lot of the work for us in that case. I don't know that, and so I cannot be shown as much. So if you're looking for things like that, it can be really helpful. We had a much easier time here with our eye line because everything is right down the lens. We're always looking right down the camera. So as long as we don't cut on these moments, Michaela looks at me here, but I have to make sure that we go back while she's still looking at the camera to match the last time we saw her when she was looking at the camera. And from there, that is how I would kind of handle each scene. I would go into those, cut up those pieces, get rid of the takes that I know I'm not going to use. And then again, looking back at your shot list and your script, just making sure that you build these pieces one at a time. You don't have to build it in order. You can build it scene by scene, and you can make a separate folder for each scene because there is storytelling to be done in editing. In this case, we did shoot very specifically to make the edit look exactly like the script, but that's not everybody's process, and it doesn't necessarily have to be yours. If you come into the edit and again, you're thinking back to that core idea and it's just not coming across, it can be worth a try to mix up the order of your scenes. We could, by taking coverage and taking lines and cutting lines, drastically change the tone once we add music and sound effects to something. So there is a lot, editing is its completely own storytelling device. And if any of you are doing documentary, documentary is so much of documentary comes together in editing. You plan your story and you know what you want it to be about in advance, but a lot of the nitty-gritty storytelling gets done in the editing. So don't be too terrified if you come into the edit and your story doesn't feel completely in place. There is a lot of work you can do in here just by removing the scenes that don't work or that aren't feeling right to you, and just looking at those scenes that are completely necessary. Sometimes that is all you need. In these, if you're aiming for 5 minutes and it becomes 3 minutes, sometimes it's just a cleaner story. If we could all tell stories in 10 seconds, I would say we should all do it. You know, like we could be amazing storytellers if we could get it down to that short amount of time. So too short isn't something to think about if you're telling your whole story. Don't worry too much about the time. As well, if your story ends up being 10 minutes long, maybe you need to cut a version you don't really like to fit it into a competition or a challenge or something like that. But for yourself and to have later, there's a director's cut there. There's the full version of the story, which you can keep for yourself. But hopefully, using what I'm talking about here, you're going to come in at your goal. We talked about I think I skipped over the actual timing, but the timing is pretty simple. All you want to do is you want to start a stopwatch and say all the lines in the script as you picture your actors saying it, trying to get that same pacing down. If you know they're arguing and they're heated, moving a little bit faster, and pausing and just picturing the action as you feel like it's going to happen, and watch that stopwatch and just see what that comes in at. Do it a few times to kind of get an average, but that's a little bit more reliable than just fully relying on one page being 1 minute, because as you watch movies, you'll see that I think that rule is a little bit more tailored towards features because it evens out over 90 minutes. But within any 5 or 10 minute period, if you watch movies and read scripts a lot, you'll see that that speed is going up and down through the whole time. So you don't want to need a 5-minute script and then find yourself on the higher end of that and then have to cut scenes in editing to squeeze it down to the size that you need it to be. I think that should bring us to basically a completed film. If there are any questions or if I kind of glazed over anything, I kind of blacked out there for a minute. But
like any good creative process, there's a moment of like blackout.
oh, and I should show you actually. So this is our living room. This is what we shot it at for this pre-show sketch, but for another one, this is the same living room with different lighting and different set deck and a different actor. So we've used candles, but you can see that you can drastically change a space with a different framing, different lighting, and different art in the room. So we would consider these candles to be art in this decorative salt shaker.
There was a feature film that I've heard of. I haven't seen it, but it was shot with only candlelight. Candlelight was the only light source.
Oh,
And they had,
really?
like, it was anyway. It was some major, huge budget thing. But just using candles at all is amazing. Anyway, thank you, Mike. This has been amazing. Barry Lyndon, yeah, this is it. Romy Robinson said that on YouTube.
Oh,
I haven't seen it. I haven't watched it, but it's the clips that I've seen have looked beautiful.
I think
yeah.
Myra asked about a film that was shot in one take. There's it doesn't have no cuts, but there's a film called Victoria, which I think only has 3 cuts, and it looks like it's all done in one take, and it's extremely impressive. There's like huge action scenes and stuff, but they did it all in one.
Isn't there the Russian Ark? Isn't that a famous art film that is only all in one shot?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Anyway, or that the war movie. What's that one? Anyway, brain is falling apart tonight. Thank you very much, Mike. Yes, Romy, we're on the same wavelength there. Art film, excellent. Yeah, thank you. So this video will be available on YouTube and on Facebook. Maybe eventually we might have to edit out the ladybird part, but yeah, 1917. That's what it was, Romy.
Oh, there are a lot of big one shots in that. Yeah,
it was one. Yeah, looked like one take. Fake. Yeah, thank you very much. Do you have anything else you want to add, or like how'd it go?
For me?
Why do you like making movies, Mike? Why do you like it?
Sometimes I don't know. I mean, I love I love the storytelling. It's really something that you can dream big, and the the process of getting together, I don't think there is anything more fun than getting a group of friends together on the weekend to shoot films. And you only need to do it a few times, and you will be coming back to this video and saying, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. This is the right way to do it. Everybody has their own way to do it. This is how I tend to approach it, but you'll find your own way to do it as long as you just keep doing it, and finding the parts that you find the most fun, which for me is always the writing and the dreaming it up and the physically shooting it, and the parts that you don't like at all, which for me is the editing, and finding other people who complement those skill sets. Yeah, because I don't like acting and I don't like editing. So I have lots of friends who are great actors and friends who are great editors. And so I tend to just, if they like to do it, well, it'd be wild not to let them.
Myra says, what's something that you wish you knew during your first film?
Planning. Definitely planning.
All of this.
Yeah, the plan. I focused a lot on the planning today because I was thinking back to a lot of the challenges that I did in the past where we started shooting at, I don't know, 4 to 6 p.m. and didn't stop shooting until like 12 or 1 p.m. the next day, doing these huge overnights for a 5-minute film, which we certainly could have shot in a couple of hours just with a bit of planning. Right. When I started thinking more about respecting other people's time, is how I started thinking of it. It's fine to put yourself up all night to shoot something, but other people, you don't want to be the cause of their bad sleep. So planning those things out in advance, you won't get the guilt when you're editing it and you see how tired everybody is.
Amazing. We don't know what the next film challenge is going to be, but we do have our festival coming up in June, and that's coming up. I mean, March. It's already March, so just a couple more months. So mid-June, if you're in St. John's, come on down and to the LSP Hall and give us a high five. Watch the movies. Thank you again, Mike. One last question from Sarah Downey. Which free programs do you recommend for student creators?
Free programs for editing or for editing? I mean, if depending on what computer you have, there's iMovie with Macs. My Windows computer has this video, it's just called Video Editor. Most of those tend to be pretty good. They can all do the basic cutting. You're not going to be able to do, special effects or really intense color correcting, but you don't need that for free software. Anything that will let you look at all of your clips and change and cut them. That's really the only pieces that you need. So if it's free and it lets you do those things, you can't really go wrong. I will try to find a few good ones that I know people who have used, and I'll see if I can link them on the Facebook or maybe the YouTube comments of this.
Right, the DaVinci Resolve is free, isn't it?
Is DaVinci free?
I believe
DaVinci is quite good.
Is, yeah, DaVinci Resolve is free, and you could do anything on it. You do very sophisticated things on it. I like them very. I like a very simple editing program, especially most of the time you're just cutting things together. You're not doing anything too fancy, so you don't need anything too high power. But I mean, of course, it's nice to be able to do that stuff. But I find it ends up being sometimes confusing.
Oh yeah, I've been using Premiere for years, and I definitely only know about 15% of what it can do.
Right, and they keep adding things to it.
Constantly, yeah.
Excellent. Well, we'll give it another second for the chat. Thank you everybody for joining us. And if you're making a movie for the high school short film competition, that good luck. Best of luck.
Yes.
The deadline is coming up soon, I think. I can't remember when exactly it is. Myra, maybe you can let me know, but or check their website. There it is. Let me don't want to leave you hanging and like stressed. So let's see if we can find it. Deadline to register your film is March 10th. So you still have some time. And their website is nlhighschoolshortfilmfest.ca. And we will link it in on our page as well. So yeah. That's it.
Yeah. Thanks so much, everyone. Good luck.